Hello and welcome to Cyberside Chats. My name is Sherry Davidoff,
I'm Matt Duran.
and today we're going to talk about Fable. I'm so depressed.
Oh,
I'm so depressed. Last week, Claude Fable was released, the next big model from Anthropic to be publicly released. And of course, this is essentially Mythos with guardrails,
yeah,
right?
it's a Mythos class LLM that's available to everyone, and we already saw how much of an improvement it was over Opus, over Sonnet, over all the other models that
Oh
we had out
God, I'm
there.
going to cry. I've been vibe coding and I had a problem that Opus 4.8 couldn't solve, and Fable just solved it. It
Yeah,
was. It was a beautiful thing while it lasted. But anyway, of course, Anthropic had disclosed the existence of Mythos back in April, but said it was so powerful they couldn't release it publicly. Instead, they started Project Glasswing, releasing it to only a limited set of technology companies and security researchers. And the reason was because, according to Anthropic, Mythos was so good at finding security vulnerabilities, it would not just help defenders protect code, it could also help
yeah.
adversaries poke holes in it.
You could very easily turn that into an offensive tool, yes.
Yes. So instead, they started rolling it out carefully, and they just released Fable with guardrails, supposedly. Well, 3 days after Fable was released,
Yeah,
everything came to a screeching halt Friday night.
yep. Friday at, what was it, 5:21 Eastern time, they received an export control notice from the government stating that, they had to remove access for all non-US citizens.
Yes, regardless
Yeah,
of where they were located. So whether or not the foreign actors were located in the US or outside the US, they were not allowed to access
yeah.
the new Fable model.
Yeah, even Anthropic's own employees who were non-US citizens
Yeah.
were instructed to be cut off from accessing that system. And because, well, there's really no way to effectively do that, they just cut access to the model completely. So,
Yes. So the way the internet works, you just have to cut access to everybody.
yep.
So I know they were trying to do that within 90 minutes, where the U.S. government was requiring it. By the upshot is that by the end of Friday night, it was gone, and we no longer had access to Fable. And we've been searching for a replacement all weekend.
There,
Okay, it was a little personal. It was a little
there is
personal.
there is no replacement. Yeah.
There is no replacement. So why did this happen, Matt?
Well, the U.S. government basically determined that this was a national security risk. They were a little bit vague about what that actually meant. Digging into a few of the different stories about it, it looks like a team from Amazon was able to kind of coax the Fable model into bypassing a couple of the guardrails that they had in place. So realistically, with Fable, as opposed to Mythos, you weren't supposed to be able to feed it code and have it identify software vulnerabilities or
And
something like
create
that, and then create
exploits.
exploits for it.
Yeah.
Amazon researchers through again just how they were asking the system to work ended up manipulating its code review function, and they were able to basically have it review code, find problems with the code, but then phrase them as potential vulnerabilities. And because of that, they called that a jailbreak, which
Yeah, a
yeah,
non-universal jailbreak.
non-universal
So
jailbreak.
Anthropic is saying this isn't a big deal. And in fact, even some independent security researchers, including Katie Missouri, have said that there is equivalent functionality in GPT 5.5 and things like
Oh
that.
yeah, Gemini can do the same thing, and like
Yes.
yeah,
So basically, security researchers, tech leadership, and Anthropic themselves is saying this is not fair.
yeah.
This is not a standard that is being universally applied equally to everybody. And they're really pushing back. In fact, I believe there was an open letter that came out this weekend as well from over 50 tech leaders calling for the lifting of these controls.
Yeah,
Is that
yeah,
right?
big names too, like Yahoo and Nvidia and CrowdStrike and others were all the members who signed this big open letter. Now, unfortunately, it's as of recording this, it's been taken down. But
It was on the Free
yeah,
Fable website. So perhaps you can find it in archive.org.
there you go.
But the bottom line is that there is some dispute. The U.S. government says this is very serious. Anthropic has flown leadership to Washington, D.C. They are working on it. So hopefully we'll see Fable back in some form or fashion, but there's no guarantee.
What's the website you found? Isfableback.org.
Yes, I've been on all weekend. Is it back? The bigger picture, though, I thought this was really interesting because I'm old enough to remember the first time we had a major issue with software being classified as a weapon, essentially. And that was back when I was a baby adult at MIT. The PGP had been released a few years earlier.
Yeah.
And PGP stands for Pretty Good Privacy. It is encryption software that was developed by a man named Phil Zimmerman. So the idea was you could have very strong encryption that would protect communications, and even the government could not read those communications.
Oh, they didn't like that.
They did not like that. I mean, really, ever since was it World War II and the
Hmm.
Enigma, it's become very clear that signals interception and protection has been extremely important for national security.
Yeah, no, it's that wandering discussion we see with the government every couple of years on whether or not something like encryption should be illegal, which is hilarious when you actually think about it. But
Well, back in the 90s, it was very important. It
yeah.
still is very important today. So, what happened was Phil Zimmerman released this on Usenix.
Hmm.
And of course, the internet being what it is, it quickly circulated the
But wait,
world.
Usenet had a US only tag you could put on your post. That didn't save
No,
him.
that did not do the
Oh.
trick. It just was basically an advisory tag saying this would be better if it stayed in the US. The result of this was that the US government launched a criminal investigation into Phil Zimmerman for
Mhm.
3 years, and there was a real risk that he might serve jail time and be convicted. So I know this was very stressful. It was still a topic of conversation when I was working on the MIT network security team back in the day,
Yeah.
because MIT was very supportive, and I know people who let Phil Zimmerman crash on his couch when he was working on the case. So it really was really important for the community at the time. Now, ultimately, this was resolved in a couple of different ways. There was a grad student in 1995 who sued the government because he wanted to publish a paper. He was from UC Berkeley. He wanted to publish a paper about a software algorithm, and it was called Snuffle.
Snuffle.
And the courts ruled eventually that software is speech and that it was protected by the constitutional right of freedom to speech.
Yeah.
And not long after that, the US government dropped its case against Zimmerman. And then not long after that, Bill Clinton actually made an executive order that removed encryption from the munitions list and instead moved it over, I think it was to
Yeah, it was the commerce
the
list.
Commerce Control
Yeah.
List. So that changed the way that it was regulated. And while it still was not legal necessarily when Zimmerman's case was dropped to export cryptography, I think what the parties involved realized was that if we don't support that innovation in the US,
Mhm.
guess what? The rest of the world will
Yeah,
invent it.
somebody else will do it instead.
And I
And
know
yeah.
that's something that you've
Well,
been talking
yeah,
about, Matt, in this
it's the
case.
same problem that we have with these AI models, and that, and I mean, we'll get to this in the takeaways, but I mean, we kind of have to assume that there are other companies, other countries who are very well funded and are very good with computer science who are out there building these, if not the same, at least something similar in terms of capability, like large scale LLMs that can be used for either military use, they can be used for corporate espionage, they can be used for cyber attacks. And if we are not keeping up with this, if we are not allowing ourselves to, I guess, have something comparable that we could use to defend or at least, augment our own systems, then we don't really take the risk away. We transfer it off to someone
It
else.
just gets
Yeah,
transferred outside the US. Matt, you just got an update from WormGPT.
I did.
Do you want to tell us
Their
about that?
yeah, their source code is yeah,
Criminal AI
Criminal
tool.
AI. Their source code is available up for sale at this point in time. For $5,000, you can buy a non-support version of it. For I think it's $8,000, you can get customer support from them as well. But yeah, they're offering up the source code for their LLM to anyone who wants to buy it. So now I mean, inevitably someone's going to purchase that.
And WormGPT is an evil
It
LLM.
is, yeah.
It is designed for purposes of crime and hacking. And where are they located? Do you have any
I have
idea?
no idea.
It is entirely possible, if not likely, that they are outside the United States, meaning restrictions like this will not apply to them.
Yep.
And I think that's the bottom line. We already saw this weekend that European leaders are calling for greater investment in their own
Well, as they
AI
should.
tools.
Yeah.
Absolutely. They feel like they can't rely on U.S. innovation. And right now, it feels to U.S. companies that we can't rely on U.S. innovation either.
Yeah.
So that's not necessarily the place anybody wants to be. And sometimes, in the case of cryptography in the 90s, it really felt like the government was trying things out, testing things out to see how would the public respond? How would the courts respond? And I think we're figuring that out right now when it comes to AI.
Right. Yeah. No, completely.
All right. So what can we learn from this? Well, I think number one, don't let a single AI model become a single point of failure. I have to say, there's no replacement for Fable in my heart until OpenAI comes out with something else that's better.
Yeah.
And I've been looking at compound models and things like that. But the bottom line is you need to have a fallback plan, just like anything else in our technology infrastructure. Prepare for the day when it may be taken away.
Yeah. The next is, I mean, you want to look at unintended, I guess, features of the AI models that you're using. We've seen basically every AI model out there be coaxed into doing something that it's not supposed to do.
Ah,
We see this in Gemini, we see it in GPT, we see it in
Anthropic's
XAI,
models.
Anthropic's models. I mean, the AI is vulnerable to these kind of things, and it probably will be forever.
Well,
I
yeah,
mean, yeah.
next week we're going to be talking about the Meta AI hack, and
Oh
how
yeah, yeah, that's
Meta
a good one.
rolled out an AI assistant
Yeah,
and the bad guys very quickly sweet talked it into, well, giving them
yeah.
access to over 20,000 accounts.
Resetting passwords on Instagram
Yeah,
accounts.
so you're
But yeah,
absolutely
I
right.
mean, realistically, the long story short, I mean, assume any AI that you deploy in your production environments can be talked into doing something it's not supposed to do. So just keep an eye on it and make sure that it's being used appropriately.
Yep,
Yeah,
absolutely. Make sure that you use AI to check for bugs in your own software, or that your vendors are using AI as well. These more recent AI tools, the whole debate is about the fact that they're really, really good about finding software
right.
vulnerabilities and creating exploits. So it's really important to get a head start on that, whether you're developing code or relying on vendors that develop code. Make sure that software is being checked by AI as well. So use it
Yeah.
for good.
And then finally, we have to update our threat models. We need to basically approach our cybersecurity posture with the assumption that adversaries have access to something equivalent, or at least something similar to something like Mythos. If we have access to it and the government has put safeguards in place to keep it inside the United States, we can't trust that other countries haven't either created their own or they're just bypassing those controls. So we just, assume that the adversaries are, up to the weapons level that you are.
Yep,
Yeah.
absolutely. We do need to assume they have equivalent cyber AI.
Right.
All right.
All
Well,
right.
this is definitely a developing story. Thank you so much, everyone, for tuning in. Please like and subscribe, and we'll see you next week on Cyberside Chats.